Welcome back. It's an interesting topic because in the morning session we had a topic about wearables at work, and now we are talking about wearables that work. And I mean, this is the most important part, because to design a wearable in a way that the user adapt the wearable and to create a wearable which is not looking ugly, or which is at least perhaps even, we always say the best wearable is perhaps invisible. So let's see what are the major goals to overcome to create a user-centric wearable. What do we have to care about, technology-wise, but also design-wise? And it's my great pleasure to welcome now our colleague here on the stage, Markus Vogt. He is the segment director of healthcare and wearables at the company EBV. Perhaps not many people know EBV, but the mother company is FNET, one of the world's biggest distributors in electronic components. And please welcome now Markus on the stage, and he will tell us more a bit about his company.
Good afternoon. As Christian mentioned, may I introduce myself? I'm Markus Vogt. I'm working for EBV Elektronik. That sounds German. Yes, it is German. We were a private company till 2000, and then FNET bought us. So we are part of the FNET group in Europe, and we are the leading semiconductor specialist in Europe. But we are not only selling semiconductors, we support customers in Europe in their designs. Our idea is to help customers from the idea to the production. As an intro, I have a very, very short presentation, and then we have a few very interesting questions from Christian. Okay, so from idea to a product, which is not easy. So there are three phases. If you start with a brilliant idea to save the world or have a wonderful wearable, to define it, to really think about it, make a plan, that takes up to 6 to 12 months in total. During that, you already start the design phase, which takes up to 12 to 18 months for a standard wearable. And then it goes into the production and sales phase. And here, that phase starts 6 months before the final production. Just to mention some pitfalls on the way from an idea to a product. So the time to market acceptance might take longer than expected. So you are absolutely convinced you have the right idea to save the world or have the best wearable in the world. But the market doesn't think so. So either you're too early or it's a little bit too much science fiction. So think about it and accept that the market acceptance might take longer. Or you don't have a clear manufacturing and distributing strategy from the beginning. Quality approval processes. We talked today a lot also about FDA. FDA certification can take up to 3 years. So if you plan to go into the health market and if you plan with FDA, you need that time in your project plan. Exit strategy. What do you do if you recognize after a while, okay, the idea was good, but the market doesn't need my product? Where is the exit door? Funding, that's more related to startup companies. Make sure that you have enough money to survive the design phase and then have enough left to finance the production. And of course, find the right partners for financing and production. Okay, there a little bit more in details. Here I want to mention market intelligence. Before you really start with design, make some research if the market is ready for your product. Again, here in the design phase, you might recognize that some parts which you had in your original design are not available anymore. They are obsolete, or they are on allocation. So currently we have an allocation situation in the semiconductor market, and we are talking about lead times of 58 to 69 weeks for memories. For primitive components like voltage regulators. Take that in consideration.
I mean, this is a very, very important topic. I mean,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have perhaps a lot of people here in the room which are just coming from the product development, business development, and at least 90 weeks lead time means you could crash your whole business plan totally if you rely on the wrong module you want to design into your product. So it's very, very important to be here very close to the guys who are applying the right modules and products to your product. Otherwise, you could run out of your time schedule totally.
Exactly. And of course, documentation. If you want to go to an approval administration, you need to have a good documentation. Otherwise, you can forget an FDA certification. And of course, sales and marketing plan. This needed to be ready before you really start. And of course, production. Again, take into consideration lead times of products. Use 2 production sites because it might take that one production site fails or there is a catastrophe like an earthquake. Keep that in mind. If you want to start a volume production, you need to have the right partners. Same for if you want to produce in Asia, you still should consider that you have another production partner either in the US or here we are talking about Europe. Okay, what about EBV and the IoT innovation contest? So as I mentioned, EBV is not only a distributor who sells parts or have a logistic concept in place. Our philosophy is to support customers from the very first idea, going through the project phase, help them in the design. We have specialized field application engineers in place to help our customers with the design. If engineering support is needed, we can here close the connection to design houses in Europe. Of course, then the sourcing, taking the lead times in consideration. We have logistic plants where we can deliver around the world, so we can support production around the world. And finally, our goal is to sell as many semiconductors as possible. But we also support startup companies. And therefore, we are a proud partner of the Innovation World Cup series. We have our EBV IoT Hero Special Award, which is worth 10,000 euro in cash, which we award to the most innovative idea during a year. I think here are our franchise partners, well-known named in the semiconductor industry. You see EBV chips, that's a very special program where we design our own modules and sell them to the end market. And I think now it's time for our questions.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned already the topic of the bill of material, and I think this is one of the questions we had in the past in all the bigger consulting projects where the problem was that the company already designed the product and the price point and even communicated the price point, and then there was this change in the bill of material in the design of dedicated modules. So the detailed look on the bill of material, how could I sustain that for the future? So is there a chance to say you design and you make at least 2 kind of design projects where you're using on the one kind of module and the other another kind of module to overcome that problem that perhaps it's sold out or it's design out, so it's out of the product line. Is this something?
Yeah, it's a very good question. What we try, and this is what I mentioned earlier, we try to be at the customer side from the very first beginning. So we know what happens in the life cycle of products. We know the roadmaps of our suppliers, and we know especially products which are endangered to get obsolete during the design phase. So with that, we can support our customers. On the other hand, we have customers, they started with the design, didn't tell anybody about it, had
security reason
or or even smaller customers, smaller companies, and they started the design, never asked for help. They sourced, let's say, the first samples through DigiKey or Mouser. They built a prototype, it was working, and then they said, okay, now I want to produce in 3 months because I have to deliver. And then they came to us, we looked at the bill of the material, 1/3 of the products were already obsolete, so we had to replace them. The other half had a lead time over 50 weeks. So to avoid that, just talk with your partner of choice, and hopefully this is Avnet or EBV in the future, to overcome that and talk early enough about your key products, and then have to discuss with about alternatives.
It could be that the product is right on the time, from the time was on the market, but you can't deliver it because you can't get the right modules.
We had that several times.
So if we overcome that problem of designing the right product, are wearables now already a lifestyle statement? What do you think? Is it really already the way that form follows function, or still versus function follows form, or where are we there? Is it a lifestyle statement already, a wearable?
Yes, absolutely. So if you look at the development of smart watches, so perhaps a question to the audience, who's using a wearable today?
Hopefully all. I mean,
we are at the Wearable conference. Come on, guys.
Okay.
Okay, looks not that bad.
50%.
50%, roughly 50%. So let's take the example of a smartwatch. Several years ago, when, let's say, the activity monitoring hype started, at that time, to tracking your daily activity, you needed a Fitbit wristband. If you do some semi-professional workout, you had, let's say, a watch from Polar, a sport watch for your running exercise. Then you wanted to track your sleep patterns. So the first products came out 3 to 4 years ago, so you had the third one. And then your doctor told you you have to monitor your blood pressure. Then you had another one. You ended up with 5 different devices. And after a while, in theory it was 6 months, most of the gadgets disappeared somewhere in the drawer. Today, if you see Apple introduced the ECG measurement in their watch. We saw, if you go downstairs at the innovation room, you see WeThings introducing an ECG smartwatch. So all the functionality that gets now into smartwatches will help, again, to have a wearable that can take all the features or has all the features you need or you want. And with that, you will keep it further than these famous 6 months.
Okay, but this is not now exactly the answer of my question. If now a smartwatch is already, or the wearables are already a lifestyle statement today, is it in a way that, for example, where do we go with the smartwatches? Will it be that we see smartwatches which have just a technology inside, like a tracker, or will we see much more, like you mentioned, with the ECG? Or do you think we will have also entry smartwatches which have just a notification purpose, or not a notification application?
Yeah, I think there will be 3 areas. So the high-end area where we especially see the Apple Watch, the mid-size, and that's also here the already mentioned sport watches. Their main purpose is helping you with your workout, and then with the right software behind, get you coached in your activity. And then, of course, the gadget. I said it's the gadget phase. So these are simple trackers with an accuracy plus minus 20%, but nobody really cares about it. If
we come now to other segments, I mean, we were talking just about the smartwatches till yet. We were not talking about the glass applications that we had in the morning already. We launched already 5 years ago this Smart Patch survey. And what do you think about these opportunity to have kind of invisible sensorics on your body in kind of a patch below your garments? What is your view on that?
So with smart patches, again, there was a big hype when they were introduced the first time. Smart patches I see, this is coming more from the medical area, and today it stays in the medical area. Best example is the Abbott Freestyle, the blood glucose monitoring patch from Abbott. This is now since 2-3 years on the market, very successful also in Germany. So we see some other medical patches coming on the market. It takes a while because you need a medical certification, you need clinical studies, all that stuff behind. That takes 3 to 5 years until you have the product on the market. And that also dictates the internals of such a patch, because 5 years ago, the semiconductor you used in that patches were not existing. The size of the pure dies, which are now in smart patches, 5 years ago, they were 5 times the size. And of course, again, power hungry. So they used 5 times more power than the products we have today. So, and if you look at the roadmaps of the semiconductor suppliers, we will also see smart semiconductors, printed electronics, printed semiconductors, which will be used in smart patches.
The topic of the size of a chipset and the form factor and then the user capability, you have a very good example, right, from the hearing industry.
Exactly.
Where design was made where even the chip was not around.
Exactly, yeah, it was when we heard about the first hearable. Now it's a term which everybody used, but when they started, we are talking about Prague in Germany. At that time, they were a startup company with 10 people, and they had an idea, a pure design idea. They wanted to have a true wireless earbud that really fits in your ear and has a lot of functionality. So the founder of Prague, he was dreaming of having a computer in your ear, which you can control with haptic, with touch, and with voice. That was absolutely new. And
4 years ago, right? 5 years ago.
Yeah, they won the Innovation Award here on the CES in 2015. Not that long ago, but if you look now, you see a lot of true wireless earbuds now. But at that time, it was a very, very new area of technology which they entered, because they wanted to integrate as many functionality as possible. But then you have the limits. The limit is, first of all, battery. You need a big battery, but the size of the housing dictates the size of the battery. Therefore, you need to have a very good power management in your system. Some of the semiconductors which are now in use in that design, they were directly designed for that. So we are talking about ASICs, customized devices, bare dies which were used. There is no housing at all around the semiconductors. It's a 7-fold PCB around the battery, and with two different radio systems in one housing, you can create a lot of problems. So there were a lot of challenges in that design, but the principal idea was to have a very nice form factor that fits in the ear without any external antenna. And therefore they needed a very new technology, a new technology for the consumer market, but a very old technology which is used in hearing aids, where you can transmit data and audio signals through the head.
But it was a real example of a user-centric design, a designer who had no ideas about the technology, just the dream to have a computer in the ear, and that was it. And
yeah, that was the basic idea, but most of the guys who founded the company, they came from different technologies. Okay, the founder, he had his own design house, so he was coming from the design idea, but they had professionals coming from the electronic.
But he saw the demand in the market, because otherwise, I mean, it was the most successful Kickstarter campaign, right, in the past.
Yeah.
And that was the showcase for that the consumer wants to have such a product.
Yeah.
But he was a bit before the time, right?
Yeah, they were a little bit early. So as I mentioned in my presentation, market acceptance, user acceptance, you have to understand and you have to talk with your end customer before you go to market. And what they did very good.
They did it, but the problem was there was no technology for the solution.
Exactly. So they did it. They did very good marketing around it together with the Kickstarter campaign. You mentioned it was the most successful Kickstarter campaign in Europe. They raised 3 million euro at that time. They made a lot of things happening in that world. They kicked off functionality which we are now having as a standard in a headset. At that time, there was nothing on the market like a headset measuring your heart rate, or you're talking about your SpO2 level, or measuring your activity level.
But there are still only a few which are doing that in a good way, right?
There are a few, but the market is there. You see it, and we see also new features coming into the Apple EarPods.
The hearable market, at least, is a big market, right?
It is. And we see also, I mentioned it earlier, the convergence between the medical healthcare device market and the pure consumer area. That is moving together, and in the hearables are a very, very good example about that. You see let's say the corporations of big hearing aid companies like GN Resound. Jabra is owned by GN Resound. So this company has two areas: the hearing instruments, the hearing aids, and the consumer type headsets. The cooperation between Starkey is one of the biggest hearing aid manufacturers in the US. They have a cooperation with Pragi around hearing instruments. And of course, I heard it yesterday in the Digital Health Summit when people were talking about the acceptance level of a hearing aid. 5 years ago, it was a big stigma, especially here in the US, if you wear a hearing aid and somebody saw it. So the reason for that, they were very, very small here on the US market. But now, since everybody is using these true wireless headsets, the stigma is not there anymore. So, and if you have a functionality in your standard headset that allows you to overcome your hearing loss, fantastic. Yeah. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's a good example how the consumer and the consumer market are thriving on applications inside the medical area.
And why should not a hearing aid user also listen to stereo sound music?
Exactly.
I mean, I saw in the CES award downstairs also a device from Phonak which is doing exactly the same. We have 2 minutes to go. Is there a question for the product design topic, product design, product integration, module design in to Markus from the audience? Otherwise, I have a question for sure. So let's go on. We have not enough time otherwise. What do you think about what we will talk here, about what kind of wearables we will talk here in the next, in 3 years from now?
Okay. Here I quote somebody, one of my customers. He said 2 sentences. The future of wearables. So we start with wearables, we have the hearables, and then we have the disappearables, whatever that means. The other thing is, the best wearable is that you don't have to wear. So, my opinion, a lot of this functionality we have now in our wristbands, in our watches, in our headsets, will be integrated in clothing. And we are talking from socks over underwear to the famous training shirt, which you can already buy at some of the sport manufacturers. There will be a lot of development. There's a lot of development ongoing, especially on heart monitoring, sweat analysis, activity monitoring, temperature analysis, coaching, direct coaching of your running behavior, and. So if you come back here in 3 years, we see, and that will be a standard, that if you buy a training shirt from Adidas, it will have integrated sensors.
Okay,
sure.
Smart Garment 4.0, something
Exactly.
like that.
Exactly.
Okay, because we were discussing in the wearable technologies field smart garments since a century now.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think on the medical side, we see, as I mentioned before, the patches. It will be a closed environment, dedicated products like the diabetes monitoring. But again, here we will see a lot of new things coming.
Markus, thank you so much for being with us. Thanks so
Thank you.
much. Give some hands to Markus, and we follow up with the next program. Thank you.